Okay, everyone. So I know there's a lot of stuff coming due quickly. So I'm going to show you one of the things you're going to need. It's really going to be the driving force behind your RTI assignment that's worth 50 points in the course. So what you're going to need to do for me this week is you're going to need to create an Excel spreadsheet data tracker for your students. So obviously you're going to need Microsoft Excel. You can do the same things in Google Sheets. I just won't have a tutorial for that. You'll just have to follow the same steps with Google Sheets being the tool that you use. So the first thing you're going to want to do is just open a new sheet in Excel. Basic terms you're going to need to know are sheet, cell, and formula. Obviously, this whole workbook, this is the sheet. You can add new sheets down here at the bottom. So here's my clicker. You just click a new sheet, click a new sheet. If you're tracking a student or multiple students, just double click. You can rename this, first period. If you wanted to track a student, you could say Matt's IEP goals. And then you can just go from sheet to sheet. So that's how you create a new sheet. Here you create cells, and then in certain cells you're going to enter formulas. I'll show you how to do a couple of them. Typically when you want to enter a formula, you'll type in enter, or excuse me, not enter, equals, and then you'll start typing out the code or the shortcut for it. So for example, average, if you just type in AV, it'll show you the most recently used, then average, and then you'll say I want the average of these cells here, so A1 colon to A18, and then you'll hit enter, and then as you enter stuff in there, it'll average it out for you. So there's the average there. So that's a quick intro. Now I'm going to show you what you need to do for your assignment. So clearing these things up, I'm going to want to delete all of that. So you're going to start fresh with a sheet that has nothing in it, no data, nothing entered in. We talked last week about how you can analyze data at multiple levels. Now we're going to look at how you can do that kind of in a shortcut version to determine student mastery or class mastery of a standard. So focusing on standard-based assessments, first thing we're going to want is to be able to track students. So I will make a section there that says students. I'm going to want to track the standards, if I can spell it right. And then just because it's helpful, I'll want to make sure that I also track the date. Just because there's going to be a lot of color involved in this, I would suggest that you kind of color code. So let's just say that we're going to do 10 standards or however many it's going to be. So going across here, just fill the shape. I would suggest using blue for the standards. For the date, scroll the same amount of cells over, and I would fill that with a pink or a purple color. You might have to choose more colors. Something that's just going to be contrasted because we're going to use red, yellow, and green for the student data once we get there. So I'll choose something that'll stand out against those colors. So those are the colors I'm using. And then for the students, let's just say that we're going to have 15 of them. We'll want to make that a lighter gray. Okay? So getting into this, let's just say we have students. You see there that my student name doesn't fit. The way to fix that cell is you just go up to A, double click it, and it'll auto size that for you. Let's use another example. Here's a catcher that used to play for the Boston Red Sox. Let's see if I can spell his name right. So his name doesn't fit. If I want to auto size that cell or resize it, just go up to A when you see this anchor or this plus sign looking thing, double click the cell, and it's going to automatically fit it there for you. Okay, some students have long names, some have short. You might want to use de-identified stuff like their student numbers. Punch those in, make sure they fit in the cell. Double click up here. It's going to auto size that for you. So that was the easy part. You're just aligning things to where you can do standards analysis and then also track when you did those things. So you have your standards here. You'll track those along. Remember, if you want to color code these, which I really suggest you do, highlight the cells. You're going to go to this paint bucket. That's your shape fill or your fill color. Choose a blue, so I'll unfill it there. If I want to fill it again, I can fill with that blue. Same thing with date. Just so that you can track that data. You could probably leave the date in white if you wanted to. But I would suggest filling it. I don't know, looks nicer. Date, again, no fill if I wanted to fill it with something. Highlight it and fill it with your color. Okay. Make sure you have your students over here. If you need to resize it, remember it's just a double click along the top of the cell and it'll auto size it for you. So looking at what we have, these will be standards. So let's just use RL 3.1 because that's the one I always choose, and say we're going to track this over a couple assessments that I give students. Okay. Dates, hypothetically, we'll give these a month or a week apart. Cool thing about Excel is you can punch in dates that way and it will auto format those for you. So that happened on the 4th of July, that happened on July 11th, July 18th. And you know, I'm gonna fill this in with your case study. You're going to have 15 students. You're going to have to track their data and make decisions based on that. So I'm going to do that right now, not necessarily make you sit there and watch me do it. So looking at what I have now, you can see I've got 14 or 12, however many students it is. And across 3 dates, I assess them on RL 3.1, which is a reading literature standard. And then I punched in their scores. Looking at that, I can't really tell how any of them did. I have a couple options here. You know, I can decide to graph everybody's score. So I can go to Insert, choose a graph here. Line graphs are typically the best way. So let's see what that would look like. All right, I obviously have no idea what that means. Doesn't make any sense. Really what you want to use with these scores is conditional formatting, so that you kind of set up those tiers that we talked about where you identify students that are not meeting the standard, students that are meeting the standard, and then students that are exceeding the standard. Really you set those up however you see fit. Like we said, you determine what mastery is, and then you develop your levels based on that. You'll know what your class looks like, and go from there. So I'll give you some general guidelines that I recommend, and then in your classrooms, again, you're going to be a professional, you make those decisions. But what you want to do is highlight the field. So let's assume we're going to track standards all the way over here, right? So we're going to highlight all of this because eventually we're going to do RL 3.2 and RL 3.3, and we're going to want to track those. So to conditionally format them, you're going to want to find this tab. In Mac, it's super easy to find. If you're on a PC, you'll need to go into the Data tab, which is up here. And then in the Data tab is where you're going to find that conditional formatting. If you're on Mac, you should be able to find it under the home screen, under conditional formatting. And what you're going to want to so when you conditionally format, you're going to want to do highlight cells rules, and then it's going to be between. And then you're going to want to do this, I guess starting from the low first, because it's going to give you red. So between, if we want to identify our low performers, typically I would say between 0 and 59 is going to be anything that you want highlighted in red. So I format that there. These blank ones you don't have to worry about, but what I can see here is that across a couple tests I have a couple low performers. That first time I measured it, that second time only 2, and then that third time I only have 1. So we can assume there's some progress being made there. So that's the first rule. The second rule, we're going to want to do the same thing. Highlight all those cells. Go to conditional formatting. Highlight cells rules. Between again. This time we're going to want to change the color. The 3 default should be red, yellow, green. That's just what most of them go. So you can go with yellow. I would say this one you want between 60 and 79. Again, I'm suggesting 3 tiers. If you want to look at 4, 5 tiers even, I wouldn't suggest going to 5. 3 or 4 is typically what I'd recommend. 3 is best unless you have a lot of diversity in the scores that your students are getting. You're going to want to use those colors. So red, yellow, green. So for this one, it's going to highlight yellow if scores fall between 60 and 79. That time I see some more highlighting there. Again, I still see some progress. A lot of students that are approaching the standard, a lot of students that aren't necessarily meeting the standard, and then fewer in this column, and then even fewer still in this next one. So one more time, highlight all of it. Conditionally format, highlight cells rules. Between, we're going to change this to green, and then this is going to be between 80 and 100. Okay. This way it's a quick and easy way, now that I have it all highlighted, it's a quick and easy way for me to see that across these 3 dates, when it was assessed, I had some students that fell well below average, some students that approached standard, and then a couple that met it. And then I can look at the next day and the day or the dates following that, and I can see growth just quickly looking at that. So it's a quick, easy way to analyze. And you can even, assess student progress here. So if you look at Matt, 2 100s, then all of a sudden he dipped down. So I might want to look into that, see if he was having a bad day or something. But with Jared here, I can see growth. Yasiel, I see growth. So for all of these students, I see growth. Some students that might have maintained or stayed the same. So I might want to see what I can do there. Again, it's just a way to save you some time, analyze data quickly, and allow you to make an instructional decision. So that's one area that you can go and use with Excel. We're going to look at one more way that you can add a level of complexity in there as well. So the last thing you're going to want to do, at least in Excel, is to be able to garner an average for each administration of the test. So what you'll want to do under each cell is you'll have a total, or an average if you want to call it that. And then underneath each one, you're going to enter that formula. So equals, average, select that. And then for this, select each student's score. So it's going to be C3 to C16. And then you hit enter. You can see there that the class average was a 68. So if you set that mastery criteria at 80%, so 80% of students need to get 80% or more correct before I move on, it's not time, or I'm not ready to move on yet. So if I want to do the same thing over here, I can do equals, average, select it, highlight those cells, enter. 78, I'm approaching it, not quite there. If you want, you can conditionally format these as well. I'll show you how to do that really quick after we do this last one. So this one equals average, and those of you that know Excel know there's a shortcut to copying and pasting. If you're not so familiar with Excel, just follow these steps. So equals average, highlight those cells, enter. We see that we got 81, and we can think, okay, great, that's my mastery criteria. We can move forward. However, I see that Hirono and Raul still aren't meeting the standard, and they haven't met it previously. So I'm going to want to keep an eye on them, and I might also want to take a look at what happened with Matt's exam there. Just so that I know moving forward, they're still going to need support in these areas. And if you want to conditionally format these as well, same way. Highlight cells between 0 and 59. They don't fall between that, so they're not going to be highlighted. Highlight cells. Oops. So I messed up. Highlight cells between 60 and 79 is going to be yellow, so you're going to want to switch the color. Okay. So these two here fell between that. Yellow means we're approaching. We're not quite there at mastery, so we don't move on. Conditionally format this between 80 and 100. Don't forget to switch your color to green. Okay. I see here on the third one, students on average got above an 80, so it would be fair for me to decide to move forward. Just a recommendation, now that I see it, I would probably move these down so that there's a space to here, but that process is still going to be the same for how you calculate that average. So go across here, you're going to hit equals average, and only highlight those cells that have scores in them. If you highlight these down here, they're going to register as zeros and they're going to throw off your average. Enter, so there's your average there. Next to it, okay, and then if you want, again, you can conditionally format those. So that's one way to look at class averages and make instructional decisions on the fly. As we go a little more in depth into this, we're also going to look at how you can track multiple standards, groups of students, and then graph those so that you can track progress over time. If, say, you were tracking IEP goals or something like that. For your final case study, what you're going to need to do is you're going to track 3 standards. I'll give you all of that information in the data. You're going to need to create a spreadsheet like this, fill it out where the conditional formatting is correct. And then you're going to submit that along with a plan for identifying those high-level learners, students in the middle, students that aren't quite meeting the standard yet. Using this tool and the methods that we talked about last week. So for this week, this is what I want you to do, either in Excel or Google Sheets. Create one of these, and then you're going to submit it. Make sure that the conditional formatting is there. Just for the sake, plug in standards. Just call them RL 3.1, 3.2. All the way, just till you fill, call it 10 cells. And then make sure that top to bottom, I can calculate the average if I punch in a data set there. So I'm going to create a data set, and then I'm just going to copy and paste it in. And if it works with the conditional formatting after I copy and paste and an average is posted, you should be good to go. So exactly what I want is a way to track students. Make sure, let's just say 10 students. So you'll have them from cell 3 to cell 12, I believe, if you have 10 students. Have a little space there so you can track standards and dates. So 10 students, able to track the administration of 10 assessments across 3 standards. So just put RL 3.1 for 3, RL 3.2 for 4, and then RL 3.3 for the final 3 standards. and then just make up 10 dates that are a week apart in the date slot. And then make sure that across those dates you have cells that are conditionally formatted to highlight red, yellow, or green, and calculate the average top to bottom in that cell. And then I'll copy and paste data in to make sure that works. As it comes out of my mouth, it sounds clear. If you have questions, email me. I'll also post directions on Web Campus and make sure that you go through the slides that are there as well.